Hello, everyone, and welcome to Amira's Champion Every Voice podcast, where we amplify the voices of educators, leaders, and innovators who are shaping the future of learning and leading with artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Jaclyn Wright, and today we're diving into one of the most important questions in education right now. Are we truly preparing students for an AI driven workforce? Or just reacting to the technology as it shows up in classrooms? I'm joined today by Attorney Dondi West, who specializes in cybersecurity, AI thought leadership, and he's also a former Navy information warfare officer. Today, we're talking about the adoption of safe AI, learning agents, and what schools need to get right, both to protect our students and prepare them for the future workforce. Welcome, Attorney West. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. How about you?
I'm doing well. For our listeners, they may not know how far back our paths go, Dondi. So I'm going to date both of us right now, if that's okay with you. I
Absolutely.
can remember you bounding through the halls of Selma High School, always a lively classmate for sure. But I remember your first introduction to the internet in our library with Nancy Sewell.
Absolutely. Yep.
And you were a class behind me, but I remember you talking about the internet and you go into that library and you are the first person that I'd ever heard of or knew to even access it. So that's how
Wow.
far back we go and even further than that. And I don't
Wow.
know if you knew
Yeah.
that I had that memory of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell that story about how Miss Sewell, how she provided me with the tech tools that I couldn't get at home. And it's funny because later on in this conversation, or at some point in this conversation, I'm going to talk about the digital divide, where our children, particularly those in Title I schools, need like digital upskilling. And it comes from someone being willing to give me tools that I didn't have at home, which was Ms. Sewell. So I'm so happy you remember that. That's incredible.
So you've always been an innovator, always been forward thinking. So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you arrived at becoming all of the things that you've become throughout your career, and actually today a cybersecurity attorney.
Yes, Glasgow Smith and Kline, or just
Smith.
commonly called GSK, which is a global pharmaceutical company that's based out of London. But so I left Selma High. I was a football player most of the time, so I really wasn't that college focused. But at some point at Selma High, I developed a love for mathematics, and so I ended up going to Alabama A&M University, where I majored in math, and I had the plans of getting a degree in math and returning to Selma to be a football coach that also taught math. So I did have dreams of being an educator, but it just so happened that I did some pretty cool things and published some papers early in my college career that it caused me to be recruited in this program called the Navy Cryptology Officer Program.
Wow.
And cryptology is essentially the thing that underpins everything about the internet and technology because it's how you protect information. But long story short, it's like you ever heard of code breaking or coding things, encrypting it where people can't understand it. So I was a cryptology officer in the Navy. So I
Okay.
graduated my degree in math, left A&M. I went to Navy Officer Candidate School, which no one told me it was going to be conducted by the Marines. So it was very tough for me because I was essentially a math nerd that was just thrown into this hardcore Marine environment. Think of the movie Full Metal Jacket. Then I became a cryptology officer in the Navy, and I've essentially spent my whole Navy career stationed at primarily at the National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, and as well as some other intelligence organizations while I was in the Navy. So I essentially worked on cybersecurity, intelligence, hacking, and doing things that were technical in support of war fighters. But it was during that time where cyber warfare was becoming a thing. And with the type of work that I did at the National Security Agency, I would always find my work hindered, or at least I perceived it was hindered by lawyers at the time. And so I felt like there were conversations going over my head, and I decided to go to law school
Okay.
because I came to believe that there would one day be a need for lawyers who understood cybersecurity. And I literally wrote my law school admissions essay about being a cybersecurity lawyer at a time where there was no such thing as a cybersecurity lawyer, at
Always
least
the same.
formally. Like nowadays, you have people going to law school who major in cyber that focus in cybersecurity law, but it really wasn't a thing when I went to law school. And so even after leaving the Navy, I continued to work as a cleared defense contractor within the intelligence community. I also did some time during the Obama administration supporting the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, focused on cyber, as well as supporting the national security staff at the White House at that time. So I had a lot of experience. And then as a lawyer, I ended up transitioning out of cybersecurity and ended up becoming a cybersecurity lawyer at Microsoft. And then I spent 3 years at TikTok cybersecurity law practice, which was very interesting.
I remember when you shared that, I showed my son. I said, I know this guy, and he's one of the lawyers at TikTok.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that was so cool.
Yeah, TikTok was, that was a really cool job. It used to be owned by a Chinese-based company called ByteDance, but I got a chance to really learn a lot about China's culture and the way that they innovate and the way that they think different from more Western countries. And so that really helped shape my experience. And then I ended up working, transferring into the pharma industry, where I now support a pharmaceutical organization where I lead their cybersecurity law practice and deal with AI security, as well as helping to move forward and develop drugs and treatments using AI. So AI is really huge in the pharmaceutical and the biotech space, just like with any other industry. So here I am. I do a lot of exciting stuff. So I'm one of those that feel blessed that I'm able to do this work, because it just feels like every day is like a fun day to me. Like no 2 days are the same, and take this type of work as my calling.
Same. I feel the same way about what I get to do today. And I
Hmm.
think still I get to connect with so many students and so many teachers. So it's still work that I get to do that's near and dear to my heart. And, I've always been a talker. So, so here I am getting to merge some things that I love as well. Dondi, at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about how you view this digital divide. And I would like to give you the space before we jump into any questions I have. I want to give you the space to hop right into that topic if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll just comment very briefly because I know you have a list of questions you want to get to, but let me just say, like, from my perspective, and this is why, like, I try to talk to any educator who will listen. We have many educators in my family, as well as my friendship circle, fraternity brothers. So anyone who's willing to listen, I usually hit them with the following, like, talking points. So first, AI and digital literacy, these are not electives. They are the new reading, writing, and arithmetic. And here's what's interesting about this particular point in history. It's like we're building an airplane while we're flying it, because teachers and students are on the same exact learning journey at the same exact time. So that changes everything. It has the potential to totally disrupt the educational model, because school systems essentially have the responsibility to ensure that their teachers are digitally upskilled, but their students are on like literally the same journey. And so that becomes a complex problem, because if you have a reading teacher is going to know reading. I think you guys like have specializations and things like that, certain tests you have to take to show competency. But we're in a situation where every single teacher will have to have a level of AI and digital competency. I'm very passionate about the digital divide. So I track this concept called the digital and algorithmic divide, which essentially says that like primarily your children that's in Title I schools, typically they may not have internet at home, they may not have access to digital tools or software or AI capabilities for various reasons. And what that does is it creates a gap between sort of the haves and the have nots. And so the thing that I'm most excited about when it comes to AI is that it has the power to literally leverage the level of the playing field to close the digital gap. But that's only if our school systems lean in the right way. If we fail to lean in the right way, then it's going to increase that digital divide exponentially.
Yes.
And so you're going to see different educational paths, different career opportunities, different life opportunities emerge for those who the school systems that don't prepare for the next wave of what a career and what a job looks like.
Outstanding. You are a teacher, whether you know it or not. You're a teacher too. You're teaching me and so many others in this conversation about the impact and the need for AI. And as you say, upscaling for our current educators, and also for it to be a part of their teacher preparation programs and requirements. I had a conversation with one of my family members who's also an educator in that area, and she shared that there were some pieces that they weren't able to access for whatever reason as adults in the district to be more impactful. And here I am working at an AI native company, and you are as well working at a technologically advanced company. And I'm sure you have leaders who expect you to use AI to make yourself more impactful and build your
Right.
capacity every day. We can't continue to tie the hands of educators because we're afraid students now are the digital natives. They were born with this technology, and we had better
Mhm.
catch up and open the doors swiftly for them before these opportunities, like you said, pass them by. We want them to be prepared to be able to compete globally. And this, like you said, and it's the first time I've heard anybody put it like this, Dondi, you said that AI is the new reading, writing, and math. Is that what you said?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
other countries have already recognized that. For example, in China, they are required to have AI literacy and AI embedded teaching at the pre-K level already. And I think that may even be a year or two old. So that just kind of shows you the sense of urgency that's needed. Like other countries are doing this. And in other circles that I run in, given my former military and government background, you would hear me talking about how it then has become a matter of national security because you can end up in a situation where you have one country that kids have been using AI as a matter of literacy from pre-K, and then you have us who are more reluctant and have all types of structural barriers that delays the adoption of AI, both from the teacher perspective, being able to learn, as well as how do you integrate it in our classrooms. Now, one thing that's interesting that I find myself saying is that had you interviewed me or had we done this 2 weeks ago, it would have been a whole different conversation because AI is moving that fast.
Wow.
So I don't know if you've been hearing about like OpenClaw or a Claude and Claude Cowork and the type of thing that AI has gone from your chat GPT or your Gemini, your sort of chat model to where I call it the world of Minecraft, where anyone can create anything because the barrier to coding has been removed. So what I imagine that we're going to see being possible this year, before the end of this year, where if a teacher sees something that their children need, you don't have to go to the tech department anymore. You don't have to wait on procurement. We're going to see a world where teachers are going to be able to build very complex tools and capabilities right from their phone within an afternoon. So imagine a history teacher who is teaching about, let me think of something, Egypt, and all of a sudden that history teacher is like, you know what, I want to build a virtual reality capability, or you know what, Claude Code, build me a immersive world where you focus on African American children or whatever demographic children and teach them about ancient Egypt in a way that this classroom will understand it. And you can hit enter and you can have that up and running in the afternoon. Or so you're going to get into a world where anyone can build anything without knowing how to code. So you're going to have to create a situation where you allow the freedom for that to have that. I want to see a situation like when I think about the teachers who helped shape me, what would happen if they were in a situation where they could literally create anything to make sure that they're able to reach us.
Can you imagine Canterbury Tales with Miss OKK?
Right.
She had
Right.
AI capabilities.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And so it's weird. That's what I mean by the opportunity is here to close that digital divide. But some of the things that I'm hearing, and I'm interested, correct me where you think I'm wrong, but I'm interested in hearing like the policy conversation because you hear a lot about we need to ban the use of ChatGPT and AI. We need to move slowly. And so you're in a situation where the whole idea of moving slowly, like that should not even be a thing. Like you move carefully, but you have to look at it more like if you have a really fast car, the fast car has to have really good brakes. So you need to think about being the good brakes on a fast car instead of just being brakes. And so that's what I think educational school systems and the people who are driving these conversations, they need to understand the sense of urgency, particularly because you have low cost investment. Because a lot of these companies, because they want to make AI, make their product the go-to product for children, they're offering these tools and capabilities up for nearly free or low cost. You have tremendous opportunity that's low cost that can close the digital divide, but you also have tremendous risk if you move too slow. Like I've already told you what like, China's doing. And so I think from a governance standpoint, and I have a very loose understanding of how school systems typically work, but typically there's like a superintendent, a CEO, But I also think, and then you usually have like a chief technology officer or even a chief security officer. So I think like school systems need to consider having a chief AI officer. And then at the school level, an assistant principal for AI. Because the ability to be boots on the ground at a school and to move the ball forward is just so critical that you have to create some type of role like that, where that assistant principal for AI is responsible not just for ensuring that AI is appropriately integrated into the curriculum and being used by teachers, but also teachers are experiencing the upskilling they need as well. And so you have to rethink the educational model, and then also you're in a situation where you can't afford to have a static model. So by the time you implement something new and you get something new going, you have to have a framework that's fluid enough to where in 6 months, all right, we're doing something different. That's how fast it's moving. Like my legal advice that I give when it comes to AI, it may change from month to month because it's moving that fast. So how do you totally disrupt what you're doing and disrupt it in a way where the new model is fluid and agile to adjust to like how fast things are moving. So I know I appreciate that's challenging, but that's why I say like you got to have some type of model that embeds a sort of owner at the school level. Like it can't be a side job for a principal, or typically it might be a tech teacher that's on staff or a teacher who just champions AI. Like it has to be something formal. So
Yeah.
that leadership has to come from the top with some chief AI officer reporting to preferably the superintendent or the CEO, but also someone embedded in each school to make sure that the school is where it needs to be.
Make sure that all those dots connect.
Mhm.
So let's jump. You have definitely created a sense of urgency here, Attorney West. But let's jump into AI and the future workforce. AI is transforming nearly every sector, as you've mentioned. Which industries are experiencing the biggest changes right now? And what does that mean for students currently in our schools? And you've already expressed what it means and how critical it is at this point.
Yeah, so I'll just mention a few. Now, first, let me just say as a caveat, I think that all industries are being disrupted significantly, but the ones that stick out to me, and I might be a little bit biased, but the ones that stick out to me first are obviously healthcare, just with the way that you deliver drugs and treatments and therapies, and the way that the doctor and the patient interacts, and the way that the level of information that patients are now able to have at their fingertips. And so I just think healthcare overall is just being disrupted, and it has the potential to really change and transform how we think about living and just being well and even human life expectancy. Also, again, bias, legal and financial services. AI is really good at document review, contract analysis, detecting fraud at scale.
Yeah.
And I see this firsthand as an attorney. AI can probably now do the work of a junior attorney or a junior associate. It's not the same, but a lot of the things that traditionally went to entry level attorneys is now for AI doing it. So we're in a situation where now entry level attorneys are expected to do a high level of work. But luckily, again, this is the AI native workforce that's coming of age. So they're well positioned to do it. And then education. And then we see a lot with media and communications and more creative industries. But the real question is what does this mean for students? It's no longer like what job will you have? The question is now how well can you collaborate with AI systems? How well do you think critically about the output of AI? And are you the type that can continuously adopt? We have to start preparing students for static careers and start preparing them for dynamic AI augmented roles.
Agility. They have to be agile.
Right.
Yeah.
And particularly for students in Title I schools, if we get this right, like I said, AI is the great equalizer. So we can't afford to treat AI as a resource only that's only available for well-funded schools. We have to take advantage of this moment.
It's such a critical juncture considering the space that we were in Alabama, where I was working at the time. I think I was an early adopter of AI to help our students with. We actually adopted Amira, which is of course the company that I work with now, at the height of the pandemic in July of 2020. And there were no policies on how to adopt an AI program. There were no
Wow.
parameters on is it safe? There were no parameters on that, but with the partnership of this company that was willing to come in and answer any questions and also partner with us to see what advice or what insight did we have on how to improve the experience for students and teachers. I really appreciate that. And as you're talking, Attorney West, I would love to possibly connect you with our CEO. It gives a class or a conference on Not all AI is created equal. And a part of what we offer is results based contracting, meaning you can look under the hood of our AI. We want you to know where this data is going, where it's housed, who has access to it, how our AI models are built, how they work. We want to assure you of the safety and also not just the safety, but it actually works. And if it doesn't, and you guys use it the way it's intended to be used and it doesn't work, you don't know what's a thing. We believe in it just that much. So I feel like as companies and districts are trying to determine what AI is safe AI, what should they be leaning toward or looking for, and what should be in their policies, they had better well be looking to experts like you and seeking out companies that are willing to be transparent with their product because there are lots of layers. I'm not an AI expert by any means, but there are lots of layers into how and where the data goes and how the AI uses the input. And a lot of people in a lot of districts, and I have to admit this, in my last role, I didn't know as much about AI and the safety of it as I know now, just 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago when I was in sales.
Mm-hmm.
The questions I know to ask now I didn't know to ask 2 years ago. To your point, things
Mm-hmm.
are changing so swiftly that we had better all be about as adults as fast as our students are learning this technology and how to utilize AI.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the risk and the need for companies to be transparent. You've worked in cybersecurity and information warfare, but how is AI changing both the threats and defenses in the cybersecurity landscape?
Yeah, AI has really lowered the barrier for entry for bad actors dramatically. Like, you no longer need a sophisticated nation state actor. So those are like adversarial countries who have unlimited resources and expertise. So you no longer need a really sophisticated hacker or bad guy. AI tools allow low skilled adversaries to execute high sophistication attacks. And so it goes back to what I was saying about anyone can now build anything. So imagine like someone using an AI agent that you can just deploy that will sit and stalk thousands of companies at a time. And those AI agents are constantly probing. So instead of this being human activity, it's now being executed by agents. And the agent gets inside your network on its own, it knows what to go look for. It knows how to hide itself. It knows. So it used to be that when there was a very serious vulnerability, you had 30 days or 15 days to patch that vulnerability. Now, because of AI can quickly find that vulnerability. So it has gone from days to weeks to hours of when you have to be able to patch vulnerabilities. So it's disrupting cybersecurity at scale. The good thing is you have to have the ability to create and procure tools to have AI and your own agents to go against adversarial AI agents. So that's very exciting. It's causing a lot of churn and a lot of work in space that I operate in for sure. So as companies who smartly adopt AI for cyber defense, you're going to see a pivot of these threat actors and bad guys going after your state and local governments or even sometimes your school systems because they are usually not as invested or well resourced for cybersecurity as your larger Fortune 500, 100 type companies. Cybersecurity is what I would call AI slash cybersecurity. Like when you think about AI security, you have a situation where not only will school systems have to invest in AI and upskilling and all the things that they have to do to appropriately move the ball forward, but they also have to be equally protected because it's making cyber threats surge. It was already bad, but AI just has made it tremendous.
An analogy earlier, really fast cars must have premium brakes. So let's talk
Absolutely.
about how we avoid those risks. What are the biggest risks that leaders are facing if they implement without strong governance? What could happen to a district that adopts AI without policy? They allow students access without policy. They adopt AI and they're not sure where the data goes. What could happen?
Yeah, let's continue to pick on our car analogy. So imagine you give every employee in your organization a powerful new vehicle, but never establishing traffic laws, speed limits, or any type of licensing requirements. So that's where most organizations are right now with AI. So the top sort of governance risks that I think about first are obviously data privacy. And so with school systems, you're dealing with an under 18 population. So there are heightened laws and standards when it comes to dealing with the data of children versus the data of adults. And there's no shortage of companies getting fined, substantial fines, or organizations getting fined because of how they handle children data. One of the most famous ones I think of is like this doll that can listen to children. And for some reason, the doll was sending back data that about children. And then these companies are very hungry for data on children and how they learn, how they think, because they are the next generation of they will hold the buying power. So data privacy, particular for under 18 in the educational space, is important. Then you got the idea of the algorithmic bias. AI is only as good as the humans that train the data. So you have implicit biases in how AI operates and sometimes makes decisions. So you have to ensure that you don't have an AI bias that ends up unintentionally discriminating against one student or even discriminating systemically across every interaction invisibly. So that's a huge thing that I worry about. And then I also think about accountability and transparency. And then how do we have conversations with vendors? Because you can imagine being a school system, but when you're talking to someone like a Google or a Microsoft, how do you hold your own on ensuring that they're transparent and letting you know what they do and what they don't do, what they collect and what they don't collect? And so just knowing what to ask. And then last but not least, if you don't create an environment that allows teachers to innovate and adopt AI, we have this concept called shadow AI, where someone still nevertheless brings their AI account to work and they're using it secretly, but you might have sensitive data about students or whatever. So if you don't give a teacher the power to have the tools that they need, but they have this account over here, what's stopping a teacher from cutting and pasting all of the students' names and date of births and putting it in his system and analyzing grades and computing grades? I remember my cousins always fussing about grade entry time, right? But if you have something that can cut that time down from, I don't know what it takes. I distinctly remember them saying around grade entry time, everybody's stressed.
Yeah.
But what if you could cut that time down in like 2, 3 minutes? But you don't, you mean to tell me no one is going to be willing to cut and paste it and do it? Like, so you're incentivizing, if they don't have the tools they need, you're incentivizing sort of risky behavior because now that data is going outside of the organization's security boundary because you didn't give them the tools they need. So shadow AI is a big issue right now.
So, can school district leaders, tech officers, when vendors are coming to them to sell a product or to sell their software, their AI learning agent, or whatever it is, can school or district leaders ask them to let us, hey, we need to take a look under the hood? Can they ask those questions about how the model is developed? Can they ask all of those types of questions to get?
Yeah, but I would say it doesn't even have to be a tech to tech conversation. Either you do it or you don't. It's like, do you collect our data or not? Do you collect student data or not? Do you use data that you collect to train your models or not? So we have to get to a place where these conversations are not considered something for the domain, like that's in the domain for nerds to have. Like it needs to be a normalized conversation. And so just asking very direct, human-centered questions. Like I want to believe, because like my grandmother was an educator, like she was my first teacher. I want to believe that educators just had this like sixth sense of like, what's right versus what's wrong.
Yes.
Of course, like talk to your legal department, talk, you obviously have lawyers reviewing stuff, but also don't be afraid to just lean in based on what you're feeling. I had this professor in law school, and this always stuck with me. He used to say, like, the best type of law is tummy law. And he was like, what is he talking about? He was like, your gut is always going to tell you, like, something just feels like it's not right. Then 99% of the time it's not right. You don't need to be some brilliant lawyer to figure that out. And so just encouraging educators to like really lean in on like just doing the right thing. So because like 80% of the time, doing the right thing, asking the right questions, not holding back, following that Tommy law, like 80% of the time that's going to drive progress and keep you in the right space.
Wow. So let's shift the conversation forward because we are definitely almost out of time. But let's talk about balancing innovation and responsibility. How can school leaders and technology directors support innovation with AI learning agents while still maintaining strong ethical guardrails in the human oversight that you mentioned? We are very careful at Amira to make sure that people understand we're about partnering with teachers and not about replacing them. So we align with your view that teachers do have a sixth sense and they'll always be needed. But how do we maintain those strong ethical guardrails and human oversight while we adopt this innovative technology?
Yeah, so I would say reject the false choice. People like to frame this as innovation versus safety. I think that's the wrong approach. I think that the school districts that move fast with strong governance will outperform the ones that either move recklessly or don't move at all. So, in other words, like if you don't move the needle, you're just like the one because it's reckless to not move, right? So reckless versus not moving the needle, like those two are one and the same. So reject that false choice. And then also think about the game Minecraft. And I've never really played it, but my kids play it a lot. But I know that they go around building stuff. And so I want to go back to my point, like when you talk about agentic AI, like we're entering an era where anyone could build anything. And this is not just unique to your traditional math and science and your traditional subjects, but also like even your auxiliary staff, like your imagine, and only because I played high school football, right? Imagine that we're not imagine, actually, scratch that. We are entering an era or we're in an era where imagine like the high school football coach building a recruitment and game film analysis platform. Like he literally, you know what, my players need more exposure. They're competing against everyone on YouTube. When I get college coaches calling and wanting to recruit my players, build me a platform where each one of my players and their strengths and their uniqueness can be highlighted. Here's all the game film, analyze game film for each student, create every student a platform and open that up to players. Enter. That could be built in the afternoon. So you also got to think about all of the auxiliary players that make up the educational ecosystem, or even think about, excuse me if I'm saying this wrong, like I like to call it like the lunch lady, right? So imagine like the nutritional director. And I know like we have men and women doing it, but I'm just jokingly saying the lunch lady, right? But like, imagine her saying, I have limited resources, but they want me to make sure things are nutritious. So let me type it in, build me an app from my phone where here's what I have, here are my resources. So optimize meal planning to be able to meet my nutritional outcomes with these budget constraints. Enter. That's built in the afternoon.
Absolutely.
So like tools like Claude Cowork and emerging agentic AI platforms, they will allow educators at every level across the whole educational ecosystem. That's why I called out the lunchroom staff and nutritionists and the coach, because they're even going to be able to build and scale and increase the value that they're able to bring to students. I would say that any governance model about AI has to include speed as a core ingredient. But speed does not negate safety, right? So again, go back to our point, good brakes on a fast car. So that's what I'm thinking about right now.
And even the resources that you're mentioning and how we can use AI in so many different ways, from the classroom to the football field. Even parents can utilize AI to help their children. Dondi, it's Autism Awareness Month, and I've recently shared that my son is autistic. And in finding that, there was also an 8-month waiting list before I could get him to an assessment. And my mom heart and my teacher's heart wouldn't let me rest. And so I typed in the things that were going on with him into AI, and I asked it to make a research based plan and routine that I could use to help my son. And I kid you not, for those 8 months, we used the plan that was generated by AI. As a parent and with a little bit of background, education background, we built this plan. And by the time we took him to assess, the doctor was saying that if you hadn't intervened and you hadn't done these things, he would have been probably level 2, level 3. But because of
Wow.
the early intervention, in partnership with artificial intelligence being used beyond the classroom walls, my son is going to have a different future and more structure and a better chance at transitioning to a formal learning environment. And so I see the possibilities, like you said, from the classroom,
Mhm.
football field, and even to our home. It's making a difference. And so, like you said, a fast and swift adoption, but with great breaks and those guardrails and human oversight. Nothing can beat the heart, to me. I've been an educator for 25 years. Nothing can beat the heart of a teacher and a mom I love how that can show up in AI for my son.
Yeah, and I tell you, my son, I have a son who's on autism spectrum as well. And one thing that I've been really passionate about is trying to I remember when my son first got his diagnosis, I can recall just being lost. We didn't have AI. You go on Google and you see all these non-for-profits out there that don't add much value. And so I really had to bootstrap my way. And so one thing I'm passionate about is trying to create things that I wish I had, particularly with AI. So what I'm gonna do here now is within our chat, I created a custom GPT centered on neurodiverse parents
Okay.
because I think that a lot of the times, like particularly with dads, I've learned that a lot of dads, period, they struggle with this, and it causes like families to break up. And so, like I said, I created something that I wish I had as a dad. So I posted that in the chat. So you feel free to share that liberally, and then I'm going to also share a prompt with you. I have a chat GPT prompt where you could cut and paste. You enter in data about your kid and it prepares you for IEP meetings because I noticed that like IEP meetings and 504 plan meetings used to be like really stressful. So I created this prompt that you can cut and paste and you can put your kids' information in there. If you have a paid version of like ChatGPT or whatever, put your kids' information in there and then it'll spit out a briefing and have you prepared to walk into an IEP meeting confident and able to advocate for your kid. So I'll share that with you after the call, but I put that link in the
Already gone to it. I'm
Mhm,
looking at it right now, and
mhm.
this is so needed because the wait list can be so lengthy, and people can give up or think I just have to wait until I see a doctor, but not when you have resources
Mhm.
created by a brilliant mind like Attorney West here. So thank you so much, and I'll definitely be sure to take a look at it, Attorney West, and definitely share it.
Because the only way we're gonna move forward, particularly with neurodiverse children, is we have to be willing to talk.
Yeah.
Because if we would have never did this, we would have never even made that connection about each other. So yeah,
I
absolutely.
never knew. I didn't know
Mhm.
that. I didn't know.
Yeah, my
And I'm
son,
just
he
simply
didn't
finding
speak. He didn't start talking until he was 5. So we used sign language from when he was born until he was 5 years old. We basically learned. I ended up learning sign language. So it's been an interesting journey. And what I'm noticing now is that it's not that like necessarily that most children are all of a sudden coming up with autism. I think that we are better as a society of diagnosing it, and so it's like it's way more prominent now.
it.
But because it's more prominent, like you said, you get these wait lists. And what do you do when we have an 18-month wait list? I don't have 18 months.
No,
You normalize
baby.
these conversations. And then even within your company, I hope that I know you guys are doing some great things, but just always remember that neurodiverse population out there that needs like, innovators and companies and tech companies and startups thinking about them as well. So I
Absolutely.
hope that's something you can advocate for internally with your
Absolutely.
organization.
You know that I will. We actually do support the needs of special needs students and also those who have some speech learning difficulty. We are also bilingual, so we can support students in English and Spanish, and we also provide reporting to parents in multiple languages. Right now, Amira services over 5 million children in over 8 countries.
Okay, awesome.
Attorney West, thank you for such a powerful and timely conversation. If there's one thing that I hope our listeners take away, it's this: the future isn't about adopting AI, it's about adopting it responsibly. To our listeners, whether you're a school leader, educator, tech director, employer, or workforce development leader, this is our moment to ensure that we are not only preparing students for the future, but protecting them as they learn in it. Thank you for joining us on the Amira Champion Every Voice podcast, where every child matters and every child deserves a chance to become a reader. Until next time, thank you.